Okay, good morning. It is March 19, 2021. And while we were talking to you about the being in the throes of a pandemic all the way through 2020, it looks like we are starting to come to some sort of a return to what we might call normalcy. Online today, we have Dr. Dave Shetler, Dr. Dave Gardner, the infamous, soon to be retired Joseph Rimmelsbach, the infamous Pamela Sherratt, and the equally infamous Michael O'Keefe. Welcome back to the Turf Team Times from the OSU Turfgrass team for 2021. Expect to see these theatrical productions for the next 3 to 4 months or a bit longer, and also expect that while we will currently run on a 2-week schedule, once we get to the first week in May, we will aim to be on a more weekly schedule. Do remember, folks, we are creating this content with two aims in mind. One, if you have questions about certain issues you're seeing, so make sure and reach out to us ahead of time. That helps us answer those questions, whether that's a herbicide or a weed issue or an insect or disease issue. Send us an email so we can answer the question on the day. And the other part is, and this is for the members of any golf course that do get this link, it's to help educate you on what your superintendents are dealing with and understand that really it's not just inside the four walls of your facility, it's the whole state of Ohio that see these problems. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Dave Gardner to give us a herbicide weed update.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Let's talk a little bit about some things that I've been hearing in the weed control world. First, if you have those patches of tannish weedy grass in your lawn, this is when they're the most visible and offensive, of course, because the cool season grass is starting to green back up. But these patches of warm season grass are usually either Bermuda grass or nimblewill. The way that you can tell the difference easily is to wait for them to go to seed. And then you can see that Bermuda grass, for example, it's a series of 4 spikes on the inflorescence. With nimblewill, it's 1 spike, and each of the florets has a relatively long awn-like structure, but really you shouldn't wait that long before trying to control this, because then, you know, the plant would set seed and you would have it attempting to come back from seed. But if you see these patches that look like this, you can try mesotrione, you can try topramazone. If you have tried those in the past and they didn't work particularly well for you, then you're pretty much remanded to using that non-selective herbicide, you know, the one that they talk about on the commercials around the evening news programs. That, you know, like we're scared to mention publicly, but that's the one that is systemic, that will actually somewhat effectively give you meaningful long-term control of these two. Unfortunately, you have to wait for them to green up, right? Regardless of which herbicide you're going to attempt to use, glyphosate, mesotrione, or topramazone, you have to wait for these to green up and be actively growing, which you're looking more like the first part of May, probably, depending on where you are. Here in the state of Ohio, if you apply those herbicides to these grasses while they're still dormant, you're going to get no control whatsoever. Okay, so that's one thing. Also with crabgrass, I'm starting to see some folks making some applications, little yellow prills, on sidewalks and other hard surfaces. You should endeavor to blow those back into the turf area. Not only then will the product actually maybe do its job, as opposed to trying to prevent weeds from germinating on the concrete, but also it's just more environmentally sound practice. But the thing is that, you know, if you have severe crabgrass pressure, like my test plots at OSU, never underestimate the importance of using a pre-emergence herbicide. Post-emergence chemistries have come a long ways, but pre-emerge tends to still be one of the more effective options. When should that go down, though? Agronomically, we say when forsythia blooms for prodiamine and all of the other pre-emergence products. You want to wait as long as possible. You want it to go down prior to the crabgrass germinating, but you don't want to put it down too early. Dithiopyr has early post-emergence activity, and so that can go out as late as crabgrass being 1 to 2 leaf stage the first week of May. The thing is, the earlier you put it down, the more likely it is that it's not going to be there while crabgrass is still germinating in June, and so that's when you're going to have problems with late season breakthroughs and, you know, callbacks. I know that the reason that people are making applications this week is that not everybody can put down their pre-emerge on exactly the day that Forsythia is starting to lose its blooms. And so you have to spread out those applications over time to accommodate all of your sites. But as I've said in the past, if you have sites that are particularly difficult with crabgrass, those are the ones where you should put down the pre-emerge later, and the ones where you maybe have a little bit lighter pressure are the ones that you could be making the applications to now. So again, when Forsythia blooms, that's the plant that's in my background, the one that looks like this with the very audacious bright yellow blooms on bare wood. Usually about the first or second week of April is when we see those bloom. And so it's when you're getting towards the end of the blooming cycle that is the ideal time to put the pre-emerge down. So we're not there yet. In fact, there's a couple of other plants that bloom yellow that go before that. One of them is Cornelian cherry dogwood, which usually blooms anytime between now and up to the end of March, but we're actually at this point, which is witch hazel. The intermediate hybrid witch hazels are what are in bloom this week. So first it's the witch hazels, then Cornelian cherry dogwood, then you have the Forsythias, and that's when you should be putting down your pre-emerge on those areas where you have a lot of pressure, okay? You can put the pre-emerge down now, just be aware that that increases the chances that you're not going to be completely satisfied with your control later in the season, okay? For those winter annual broadleaf weeds, if they look like this, that's the time to attempt to control them before they have a chance to flower and set seed. That said, a lot of the winter annuals that I see right now look like this still. And in this situation, they're still kind of dormant. You know, they're there, they're kind of not really doing anything yet. And at this stage is when the control is sometimes not quite what you're hoping for. So you want them to start growing a little bit in order to optimize the chances that you're going to be satisfied with your control with your herbicide, but you don't want them to necessarily be in bloom yet. Okay, so there is kind of a sweet spot timing to attempt to control winter annual broadleaf weeds. As far as what to use, 3- and 4-way herbicides, stick with the ester forms. Those are the ones that tend to be more active and give better control in cooler temperatures, which is what we have now, right? There's another one to consider, the active ingredient flurazulam, marketed as Defender, among other things. That's actually a unique chemistry because it works very well in cool weather, one, but two, it has a good spectrum of control of those winter annual weeds. So, you know, like mustards, chickweeds, all of those winter annuals. Plus, it has pretty good activity on dandelion and clover. And again, it is a product that works very well in cool weather. Now, it's a single chemistry, and so it doesn't have a broad spectrum of control. So if you have plantain or any other weed in the lawn, know that you would need to combine that product with another post-emergence chemistry in order to get a broader spectrum of control. But this is a good product for winter annuals post-emergence, or use an ester form of your favorite 3- or 4-way herbicide. And that's what I have for this week.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. All right, next up in the batting order, Dr. Dave Shetler talking bugs.
Morning. Let me go ahead and bring up my PowerPoint. Make sure it comes up here. I really have only 3 critters, well, only 3 critters in the middle of the winter here to talk about. And we have had some significant periods of snow cover across Ohio this winter, which has been kind of unusual for us. I just wanted to point out that there's at least 2 of our critters that can remain active under the cover of snow, and that would be the winter grain mites and crane flies. Both of the native, we had a lot of native crane flies that emerged last fall. I'm quite sure that we had sufficient soil moisture for those to lay eggs, and so they've probably been easy or active munching the decaying thatch under the cover of snow. But in those counties up around Lake Erie, we also have one of the European species of crane flies up there, and it's a species that has 2 generations per year. So the winter generation is active anytime the soil surface temperature gets above freezing. And of course, that was one of the things that was occurring under the cover of snow. The last one, I did get several reports last fall And fairly late November, where some people had complained that they still had some animals digging up white grubs that were still at the surface. That's very likely European chafer. Again, European chafer is only in about the northern quarter of the state, but it's a what I consider to be a true cold season white grub. It's the last one to go down, and it's the first one to come up. And so I wouldn't doubt now that the soil has thawed out. I know it's thawed out because the earthworms were all over the driveway over the rains that we had over the last week and a half. And so once the soil thaws, the European chafers will come back up and finish their feeding off. For those of you that don't know what these critters look like, the little winter grain mite is more of a nuisance pest than anything else. The mites themselves come out at nighttime or under the cover of snow or on shady days, cloudy days, and they'll feed by rasping the surface of the turfgrass blades, extracting the chlorophyll out of that, and it sort of causes the leaf blades to look like they've been blanched. I mention this because they're often blamed for winter wind scald. In other words, if the turf is out in the open and get wind, some people blame that it's winter scald. And again, it's sort of a blanching of the leaves. And of course, we've had some snow molds. Now, to me, these don't lay the grass down like the snow molds do, but you can get the blanching of the turf. There's really no reason to control these. They'll be gone when the turf starts to, again, actively grow. And so it's really kind of a pest of using the grass leaves that remain that really aren't actively growing. The other one, the crane flies. Here's a picture that my former colleague Harry Nimchek had taken just to show you. This was after a cover of snow had disappeared. There was an insecticide applied, and a whole bunch of these crane flies came to the surface. What I really want you to see here is the absence of grass blades. When these crane fly larvae are feeding during the wintertime, if it's the European species, they do feed on the leafy green material, and they'll eat it down to the ground. And so when the snow melts, if there's no turf there, you probably ought to take a closer look. That could be one of the European species of crane flies. I've never seen that with the native ones. What the native ones are doing in the wintertime is they're actually sort of nature's dethatcher. So they're beneficial in removing the thatch for you. If you do find a crane fly larva, it will be maggot-like. If you let it crawl around, it will have a little black head capsule that sticks out the front end. And the other diagnostic feature is it will have what we call these anal papillae. It has these little flappy extensions on the tip of the abdomen. If you see those, you know you're dealing with a crane fly. Again, my feeling is if you've got missing turf, if you're in the northern part of the state, you're probably dealing with what's called the March crane fly or the common crane fly, European species. You might want to consider a treatment if the crane flies are active. We've had most success with combination products like Aloft that contains clothianidin and bifenthrin, or the Triple Crown, which contains imidacloprid and 2 pyrethroids. For some reason, the pyrethroids seem to activate these maggots and they move around more, then come into contact with a neonicotinoid insecticide and takes them out. Finally, the European chafer. It's generally been my experience, European chafers seem to cause more damage around flower beds or along the edges where there might be a hedgerow or something like that. The grubs seem to like turfgrass roots, but they also like to nibble on the roots of other plants. If you do find fairly good sized grubs this time of the year, pull back some of that turf, pull up some of the grubs, look at the raster pattern. Remember, that's the pattern of hairs on the tip of the abdomen with your hand lens. And if you see 2 distinctive rows that sort of go out in a Y shape at the anal slit, you're dealing with the European chafer. I'm not sure there's much you can do about control at this time. If there are skunks or raccoons, which are also up and out digging around, you might want to consider using a curative insecticide. Again, Dialox is still on the market. I've had pretty good success as a curative treatment with using the arena insecticides and the fastest acting of the neonicotinoids. Okay, that's all I've got. Back to you, Ed.
Thanks, Dr. Dave. Appreciate it. The insight on insects is always incredible. All right. Coming up with nothing but all that experience and knowledge, the famous Joseph Rimmelsbach. Joe, take it
Thanks,
away.
Ed. Thank you, Ed. Well, it's good to see that we're kind of coming out of winter, and at least the grass in southern and central Ohio is starting to green up a little bit. I actually mowed my back lawn this last weekend, more or less just to blow the leaves away than versus mowing grass, actually. And I just like to just mention, as we start the season, just to, work with, maybe have a plan for a true integrated turf health management program. And so right now, Dave's talking about herbicides, keep to the basics, if you have barriers, seeding, mowing, and fertility. Disease-wise, of course, there's not a whole lot going on, although there's the one disease coming out of winter. And since we had extensive snow cover this year, we did have quite a bit of snow mold, especially in central and northern Ohio, wherever we had extended periods of time of snow. You may recall, of course, there's two general groupings of snow molds. There's the gray snow molds and the pink snow molds. The big difference is that the grays really need a substantial length of time for snow cover to develop. And they've been quite active. Right here at my house, I have it on patches of bent grass, tall fescue, bluegrass, and it mats down the grass. And it doesn't kill the grass, though. So that's the good news. It may look quite patchy and laying down. And I don't know, Ed, if you have some photos of this or not, but you could maybe show those. But it grows from leaf to leaf and mats it down. It almost looks like a wet paper mache when the snow melts. The crowns are alive. It will grow. I've noticed here locally on some golf courses, it actually stands out more right now than it did earlier, because the surrounding grass that was not affected is greening up. These are still matted down, quite crusty. There's not a whole lot you can do chemically. Just break up that crust, maybe mow it, rake it, let light get down to those crowns, and then that'll recover. And that can be both on high cut lawns, sports fields, lawns, golf courses. The pink snow mold is pretty much going to be confined more to golf courses, and it'll go forward. It does not need snow cover at all. Historically, we'll have it present on golf course greens, especially where there's a lot of poania, all the way up to June, potentially when we have cool periods. If we have cool, wet periods, it'll take off. So be aware of that. And usually it makes nice, distinct spots on the green or fairways. And from those, if you have them right now, if you didn't control it over winter, those have a lot of spores in them. There'll be a spore sink, and then they can be moved on equipment, water, et cetera, and move into surrounding areas. The other thing I just want to mention is samples. This year, since I'm transitioning out of Ohio State on an active role, samples will be taken over by Todd Hicks. And the big difference, kind of like it was during COVID, is do not send samples to Cotman Hall because of two things. The COVID's still going on and the mail system is extremely slow. And the second thing is Todd is actually moving the diagnostic clinic from Cotman Hall to the OSU Turfgrass Research Center there on North Star Avenue. So we have good information on our website and on the Plant and Pest Diagnostic Clinic site. It talks about how to send samples, but the key is send them to 2010 North Star Road, and the zip code is different from the university. It's 43221. So that's where the samples will go, and then Todd will be working with those. I just want to wish you all a great year, and you might see me around, but I want to wish you a very successful year in 2021. Hopefully this COVID thing, we can kind of rise out of this funk and get back to normal. Of course, this last year we had a fantastic golf season because we were allowed to get out and do golf. And I know many lawn care companies and landscapers did quite well. So I hope you all have a very successful year. Take care.
Thanks, Joe. Just following up on your images. So a couple of things, like Joe mentioned, the matting down, are you going to get with the grey snow mold versus the more distinct patches that we'll probably see with the pink snow mold or microdochium for the aficionados who are starting to use that term more frequently. The one thing is that you'll see that green image more so in the middle of the pink snow mold. And these are on treated areas in northeastern Ohio on greens and tees where we saw some of the activity. The other thing, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you should see with the naked eye sclerotia erupting from the tissue with the grey snow mold versus the pink snow mold. That it close up, if you can get down there, you don't necessarily need a scope. When it's active, the grey snow mold sclerotia should be showing through the tissue.
Yeah, you'll see them. And like on this picture here, you can see they're not quite as wide. They'll be narrower than the leaf blade. Very easy to see. Colors will vary tremendously from kind of this pinkish color to flesh color to orange color to brown color. There's different species, etc. Very easy to see. And those, unfortunately, will fall down into the thatch and soil and live for decades until we have more snow.
And that is how it works. And then obviously the grey snow mold, not as selective when it's having that impact across the tissue of the turf. The other thing I did notice, Joe, on one of the courses was red thread is already active as well. And it seems to be something that is showing up more frequently and for more prolonged periods of time up here in northeastern Ohio anyway.
Yeah, with the cool conditions, red thread can be active any month of the entire year, and it can be active on any cool grass species that we grow either also. So it's very widespread. Good points.
Okay. Joe, is there anything else you want to add there?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Following up on Joseph, the inimitable Pamela Sherratt.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's great to be back with the Turfgrass team. First of all, I wanted just to give a quick shout out about the Ohio Turfgrass Foundation and OSTMA are having a Grounds and Greens seminar on March 31st and April 1st. And you can sign up on the OTF website for that. We're really excited. We've got some great speakers lined up, both from the state of Ohio, from America, and from superintendents and sports field managers around the world. So we're really excited to be putting that on March 31st and April 1st. And that will be online as a webinar. So I wanted to mention that. And then, Joe, I think the address for the Turfgrass facility is 2710 North Star Road. So I just wanted to clarify that. COVID brain, right? I think we all have it. So I just wanted to mention, because I know Dr. Gardner had talked about putting pre-emergence out. We're going to see a lot of wear and traffic on these sports fields because everybody's trying to get out there now and not just start the season for this year, but catch up on the season from last year that they didn't get to do. And so I just want to talk a little bit about native soil fields and I think we're going to have to be really careful not to overload these fields and to put too much traffic on them in the spring, because if these fields get ruined at the beginning of the season during a rain event, because we have quite significant rain events in the spring in Ohio, if we go out there and we have 2 or 3 games on a weekend during the rain, that field can be pretty much destroyed for the rest of the season. So it's going to take some good planning, rotation of fields, great communication with coaches and players and teams and leagues to try and spread some of that wear out, maybe utilizing some of the synthetic surfaces during inclement weather to try and protect some of those natural grass playing surfaces. Getting back to what I was saying about Dr. Gardner talking about putting out pre-emerge, if you are going to be on an aggressive overseeding program, which you probably are in the spring during all this play, make sure that you're putting out a pre-emergent herbicide that does not inhibit grass seed germination. And so mesotrione or Siduron are 2 products that you could use. Just be careful, whatever you're putting out there, that isn't going to inhibit the seed germination. And lastly, I think the soil temperatures are around about low 40s to mid 40s in central Ohio right now. And so we've got prostrate knotweed will be germinating probably in the next week or two. It's a summer annual broadleaf, and it is the first weed to germinate in Ohio, and it thrives on compacted soils. So if you've got compacted soils on your sports fields, look out for that. It can be selectively removed with broadleaf herbicides, but you'd have to, again, be careful that whatever you use is not going to inhibit grass seed germination. And lastly, for those of you that do want to start an aggressive overseeding program, you might try tetraploid perennial ryegrasses. They will germinate at lower soil temperatures than our traditional diploid ryegrasses. And so you can get germination at 45 degrees with these tetraploid ryegrasses. So you might consider putting them in a blend with your regular diploid ryegrasses. They aren't quite as stress tolerant in the summer, and they don't compete as well with Kentucky bluegrass. And that might be a plus if you didn't want the ryegrass to take over a bluegrass stand. But as a blend, I think it's worth trying if you're trying to get something established quickly now while the soil temperatures are still a little bit too cool for grass seed germination, which is typically around 50-55 degrees. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Pam. One thing to clarify, based on the commentary regarding the address, just let's make sure we get that correct. It's 2710 North Star Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43221. I left out the last number. Okay, but it is 43221, okay? And okay. All right, last but most definitely not least, and obviously we're holding up his time on the tee box, Mr. Michael O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Great to be back, and glad to hear all this great advice. I'm taking notes here, Pam. Thank you so much. One question I have for you guys actually is, I put down sod last fall. Should I be worried about crabgrass this year with new sod?
Yes, it's all your fault.
Dave, Pam?
I'm sorry, Mike, what did you say?
How much of a crabgrass problem did you have before you put the sod down?
I had a crabgrass problem, but I kept it under control. But I put all new, brand new sod down. Sorry to pop this question on you guys, but
I feel like this is one that in the middle of the sod pieces, you're going to have relatively less of an issue because, among other things, the seed needs a light trigger in order to be compelled to germinate. That said, where you have seams and stuff are where you're likely to see a problem.
wow. Okay, good advice, good advice. Ed wanted me to give an update on the international goings on. With regard to our program, we have been shut down. There was a presidential ban on all people coming into the States on J1 visas, but we're hopeful it's going to open back up in April. And we've had a lot of our hosts very, very kind and appreciative to us and saying how much they miss the kids from overseas. In the meantime, I've been working with Dr. Gardner. We've set up an excellent Zoom series with the Middle East. There's a hunger for knowledge out there around the world, and what you all do is very, very appreciated around the world. And Dr. Gardner has done an excellent first seminar out to, I can say, from Egypt to Cambodia, if you can believe that. Zoom has been wonderful. We've had to adapt to this technology, and I think all of you have adapted very well, but this is the future. We're going to have to learn to do more of this. And there's another exciting thing coming. I don't know if I should say this or not, but there's a prospect of a major league cricket league being set up here in the States. And one of our past students is very involved in that. It's just in infancy yet, but again, reaching out for some advice and some help on that side of the business. Jonathan Dees, Pam Scher has been wonderful with sharing that knowledge, and that's the beauty of international connections. And Pam, we appreciate your connections very much on this. But I will, I will definitely be updating you more on this as we go along. But Dr. Shetler, thank you so much for what you do internationally as well. We appreciate it. But Ed, that's about it. I got to get a tea time here at 10 o'clock, so I better get out of here.
Just for clarification purposes, Dr. Shetler is not a clone. Dr. Gardner has not done anything on the Dubai presentations. It's Dr. Shetler, but that's okay. Mike is thinking about his tea time, not what's going on. All right, folks, that is the first Turfgrass Team Times, which is completely unproduced and unedited, as you can tell. We appreciate everything that you do, and make sure and reach out to us during the season. We will be back with our comedy of errors as we continue. Let's hope for a mild spring with sufficient amount of moisture and a nice mild kind of wet kind of sufficient amount of moisture for the summer. Oh yeah, that ain't going to happen. All right, hold on to your hats. It's going to be a bunch of fun. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Sorry.